Go to item B2, which is a briefing on law enforcement mutual aid. That will be followed by an update on the status and implementation of the city's bond development and delivery plan. And the chair will recognize our new city manager on item B2.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll have interim Assistant City Manager Bruce Mills come up and introduce the law enforcement mutual aid briefing as well as APD team. Mr. Mills?
Thank you, Manager. Good morning, Mayor, Council. Bruce Mills, the rented Assistant City Manager. I've talked to several of you last several weeks about the police response to the protest, particularly on the UT campus on April 24th and April 29th. Because of that, there's some confusion. Maybe thought we'd do a presentation to hopefully bring clarity to the way that the police department operates under mutual aid and how we respond to protests. So Chief Henderson is in Washington this week for Police Memorial Week. I've asked Chief Fitzgerald and Chief Lee Rogers. Chief Fitzgerald and Lee Rogers both were involved in this and make decisions in terms of approving the method. So I've asked both of them to present a short presentation for you and then answer any type of questions we may have following that. Chief Fitzgerald.
Good morning, Mayor Pro Tem, Council members. I'd like to start off by thanking you for your time today. APD always enjoys the opportunity to communicate and be transparent about our operations, the how and why we do the things the way we do them. Next, I'd like to introduce Assistant Chief Lee Rogers. Chief Rogers was the duty chief during the time over the events that we're going to talk about today. He was on the ground. He's going to be able to offer valuable insight. He has a wide breadth of experience with crowd management, so he will be available at the end of this presentation should you have any questions. So we're here today to talk about mutual aid, more specifically the assistance that APD provided to UTPD during the protests in late April. I'm going to cover both of the days where arrests were made. But before I do that, I want to walk you through mutual aid and how it works. All departments have a finite amount of resources. When faced with an incident that goes beyond the capacity of what an individual department can effectively control, we rely on the assistance of neighboring agencies to help keep our community safe. What gives us the legal ability to provide and request assistance? Obviously, it is the duty of every peace officer to preserve the peace in our jurisdictions. We do have a memorandum of understanding, an MOU, between APD and UTPD. Additionally, there's a unique provision in the Education Code, specifically 67.03, which gives the Austin Police Department concurrent jurisdiction on the campus of the University of Texas at Austin. What does mutual assistance look like? It can be anything from a basic call for service, could be another law enforcement agency on a traffic stop in which an officer stops to provide quick assistance to make sure that they're okay for officer safety reasons. Could be a pursuit that starts in another city, crosses over into our jurisdiction, ends up into a field search, a perimeter, any of those things. UT special events, there are many concerts, football games, sporting events that UT asks APD for resources. That comes in the fashion of personnel, equipment, our tactical units, all of those things. Our SWAT on-call coverage. If ever our SWAT teams face a call-out that goes beyond a normal time period in which they need relief, we have verbal agreements with several other SWAT teams in the Central Texas area that they'll come in and relieve our officers. Additionally, should we face two SWAT call-outs at the exact same time, we have those agreements so that we're able to handle those calls and make sure they're covered. UT investigative assistance. This specifically refers to the murder of Haruka Weiser. This occurred on campus at UT, but based on the limited resources that they had, APD came in to help with forensics, collection of evidence, and ultimately, we became the primary investigative agency in that case. The Austin bombing incident, which is still fresh in our mind from 2018. Once we knew that there was a threat to the public, the number of calls for suspicious packages increased significantly. Texas DPS came in to assist our agency and cover those calls so that every suspicious package call could be covered. The AISD shooting on December 5th, 2023, this started out at Northeast Early College High School with the shooting of Sergeant Val Barnes. The response, the multi-jurisdictional and multi-agency response was impressive. I happened to be there that day and saw over 150 officers ready to form rescue task forces and go into that school to ensure that those children were safe. Additionally, the Arboretum shooting occurred at the Tapioca restaurant. Again, multi-jurisdictional, officers from the Sheriff's Department, constables, our federal partners, FBI, ATF, DEA, all responded to make sure that scene was safe. This is so routine and so frequent that agencies assist one another. It's outlined in our policy. It's the order of the department to provide assistance whenever possible, consistent with the applicable laws of arrest and detention orders of this department when another law enforcement agency requests assistance with an arrest or detention of any person. This is important because no matter how our officers are acting or where their actions are, whether it's with assistance or in their normal police operations, they're always going to fall under APD policies. Their actions will fall under the scrutiny of APD review, whether it's use of force. Any of those things are all going to fall under our purview. This department may also request outside agency to provide assistance. Again, this is a two-way street. There are and will be circumstances in which we'll need help. Request and notification. This slide is just in kind of relay that there is a notification and communication process when requests or assistance is requested. Really what I want to highlight on this slide, the extended time period and the impact to APD resources. Obviously, a traffic stop or something that isn't going to take an extended period of time, that will stay at the sergeant or dispatch level. If it's something larger, like the protest, that notification system is going to go all the way up to the assistant chief as well as the chief. If 911 call responses are going to be impacted, that information will be relayed to city leadership. Command and coordination of APD personnel. APD personnel shall not be placed under the command of any outside agency. This is important and really emphasizes the fact that as our officers go to render this assistance, they're not going to be placed under UTPD leadership. Our supervisors are going to go, and again, all of our policies, procedures, all of the reviews that we conduct are going to apply in those situations. This is a list of local agencies that APD works with on a daily basis. They're either within our jurisdiction or they border our jurisdiction. We work with, we interact, we request assistance, they assist us routinely and on a daily basis. So I'm going to unpack the events that transpired on each of these days. But before I do, I want to provide some clarity on the arrest process. UTPD placed every person under arrest both days and filled out all subsequent paperwork related to those arrests. APD was only asked to assist in placing people into custody. APD was asked at various times to assist with taking people into custody, but again, those individuals were already placed under arrest by UTPD. It is our understanding, and acting on the information that we had, that all persons involved were given multiple opportunities to leave before being arrested, and that multiple warnings were given, and that they would be arrested for criminal trespass if they did not leave. So we'll start with April 24th. We were asked the day before to provide logistical support to UTPD due to the size of their department, approximately 70 officers, and the likelihood that the crowd size would be large. We were originally asked to transport their arrests using our transport vans to transport arrestees to the Travis County Central Booking Facility. We agreed to this. As the crowd size grew and conditions became more complicated, they asked us to come out to the lawn to provide scene security. And essentially what I mean by scene security is have more officer presence on the lawn and allow UTPD and DPS to effect the arrests that they have made in a safe environment. Some videos showed APD officers going hands-on with subjects as incidents unfolded right in front of them, but again, those were UT arrests. Moving to the 29th, we were asked in advance to provide logistical support to UTPD due to the size of their department and the likelihood that the crowd size would be large. Again, we were originally asked to transport their arrests, which we agreed to. Again, the crowd size grew, conditions became more complicated, and arrests took a longer amount of time to effect. DPS and UTPD needed officers to come out and give them relief due to the heat. We assisted by continuing to take people that were in the circle encampment into custody, who were already warned and given the opportunity to leave. So at this time, I'll go ahead and open it up for questions.
All right, let's see. Councilmember Vela, let's start with you, and then Councilmember Kadri.
Thank you very much for the information. I appreciate the overview. I think the fundamental question that arises with regard to, especially the First Amendment related arrests, would be thinking about the 24th. There is a state law now that passed in 2019 that guarantees essentially both the general public and students the right to protest at the kind of common outdoor areas at state universities. And my understanding of what was going on the 24th was that there were a group of students that had gathered together to protest and then began to walk toward the South Mall, which was the ultimate kind of site of the protest. And I believe that UTPD, again, and/or DPS, I'm not sure, I wasn't present, basically kind of met them at the Speedway intersection of essentially that kind of the Eastern Mall and Speedway, and that's where essentially kind of the conflict started. I'm not sure exactly when the arrest started taking place, but I guess my core question would be that let's assume for a moment that it is illegal to camp at the South Mall, and that once you set up your tent on the South Mall, UTPD says, hey, you cannot do that, you've been warned, you need to leave. That person then refuses to leave. That person can be arrested for criminal trespass, right? My understanding is that some of these arrests were taking place before anyone had really kind of camped. They said that they wanted to camp, but again, just saying that you wanted to do something to me does not trigger. And so to me, that's kind of the situation is where if there is one of our mutual aid law enforcement agencies is making arrests in a situation where there may be questions about the constitutionality of those arrests, the propriety and appropriateness of those arrests, how does APD grapple with that?
So I can't really speak to the timeline on the coordination between the University of Texas administration and their police department. All we provided was support for the University of Texas Police Department once the decision was made by their administration and by their department to go ahead and place individuals under arrest for a violation of state law. Once that happened, we were asked to assist by providing a safe place for the officers to interact with the group and effect those actual arrests. We were also asked to transport to Travis County Jail because they just did not have the staff and the availability. So we wanted to provide a quick way to de-escalate the situation by moving protesters and individuals that were arrested off of campus and transport them to jail in as efficient a way as possible. And that was the basis for our assistance on that first day.
In other words, so APD was not making any kind of individual judgments of whether, this arrest, should or should not have happened, or there was kind of, you were, again, under the direction is the wrong word, taking orders is the wrong word, again, because based on your orders, y'all always maintain your independent judgment in these kinds of situations. But, essentially, if UTPD or DPS says that someone is trespassing, that person, we're going to arrest that person as a default matter, you would then arrest them?
No, we did not arrest them. If the University of Texas or the Texas Department of Public Safety made that arrest, we provided assistance in terms of transport, in assisting in the processing to expedite the situation, to try to remove people in as quick a manner as possible from the campus.
Got it. So if UTPD, for example, decides to make an arrest, you would assist with essentially the detention and transportation of that person, as that was the support capacity that APD was providing?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay. And with regard to, this may be more of a question for law, honestly, but another concern that arises is potential civil liability. If there are lawsuits related to mutual aid kind of situations, again, thankfully, I'm not aware of any injuries or any major injuries or anything like that that took that stemmed from the protests. But I believe that even the interference with the First Amendment right to protest could potentially carry civil liability as well. What is our civil liability, potential civil liability in these kind of situations where we're asked to provide mutual aid in a protest situation?
I think the city attorney has something to say.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. The question, we are liable for our own actions. Our officers are part of the city of Austin, so that would be there. As they've mentioned already, these were transport issues for that day, and we're not anything further than that.
And understood, and I think of this more honestly on the 29th, I believe. The 29th was the second day of major arrests, and on the 24th, but my sense was that APD officers were much more directly involved on the 29th. Again, my understanding is due to the DPS. Basically, it was a hot day, and I think officers were needed to rest, and I believe APD stepped in. Does that change anything in terms of the liability? Again, where UTPD is making the arrest, is making the decision to make the arrest, but APD is, for all intents and purposes, effecting the arrest.
Well, our officers, again, the city of Austin is liable for our officers in their actions. The MOU says that we're responsible for workers' comp, for liability, those kinds of things. So that's always an issue, of course.
And are we aware of any potential other cases? I'm not personally aware of them, but civil liability in terms of interference with First Amendment rights? Is that a concern, or have there been any kind of? I know typically that would be more of an injunction than a monetary judgment, but have there been any kind of monetary judgments for interference with a First Amendment right?
I'm not sure that the answer to your question, but as far as I know, we have not had any claims as a result of the protest in April. So I would hope that will remain that way.
Agreed. All right. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Kadri.
Great. Thank you. I just had a few questions. I had a list of questions, and certain things were said, so I do want to follow up on it. You had mentioned about conditions getting complicated and violation of state law. From what I understand, camping never occurred at UT, right? Everyone kind of, UTPD, DPS kind of came out in full force before any camping took place. So what was the violation of state law?
Everyone was arrested for criminal trespass, as far as it's my understanding.
Okay, and that includes students? It was everyone, regardless of what classification they kind of fit in?
Yes, by the University of Texas Police.
Okay, and they were arrested for criminal trespassing on what grounds, if they were students? I guess I never fully understood that.
I think maybe there would say that you should be asking that question to the university police.
Okay, fair enough. Just going back to my other questions, who signed off on APD assisting with UT protests?
I was the duty chief that day, but ultimately the request was made from the University of Texas Chief of Police to Chief Henderson.
Okay, so Chief Henderson would have been the one signing off?
Correct.
Okay, got it. And then how many officers went on the 24th? And then separately, how many officers went on the 29th? You guys have a rough number?
I would say that we probably provided 40 to 50 officers to assist.
On each day, 40, 50?
Not everybody made it onto the campus. Some officers that we kept in reserve if there was to be some activity that actually came off campus as well, and then also to maintain officers in reserve to rotate in due to the heat and the weather.
Got it. And then it looks like on the 29th is when there was support for arrest. Was there no support for arrest on the 24th?
Support for arrest.
I'm sorry?
I don't understand support for arrest. That's what we provided both days. We supported the University of Texas Police with the arrest that they made both days, both with transport.
Okay. Yeah, no, on the 29th it says asked to support arrest. On the 24th it doesn't say that. So I was just confirming on the 24th there was no asked to support arrest.
Well, what you would have probably seen on social media and maybe in some other places is where after the groups that were barricaded and chained together were initially contacted by University Police and DPS, those individuals were escorted out one at a time. And at times, APD officers assisted the University of Texas and DPS by going in, physically making contact with people, giving them another opportunity in which to leave, letting them know that if they didn't, they were going to be arrested by the university. Go ahead and helping those people up, placing them in flex cuffs at times, and then taking them to where all of the arrested persons were being processed.
Got it. And then was this classified within APD as a formal emergency assistance?
It was definitely a request for assistance. I don't know what would do. I mean, we had some planning and lead time. So in terms of emergency, I don't know that it would have been classified as emergency assistance in terms of something that was just sprung on us at the last moment.
Okay. And then a few more questions. I was looking online, and the Fort Worth Police Department, they include in their general orders for police assistance to outside agencies the following. It says officers shall assist only in cases where the involvement would not constitute a violation of the law or department general orders. I take violation of the law, anything that might infringe on freedom of speech. Is there a reason we don't have a similar language in APD's general orders for assistance?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. That's it on mine.
Thanks. Councilmember Kelly.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. I would just add one thing that I think was a little not there, and that is that multiple different types of public safety departments utilize mutual aid. I'm familiar with that because of the fire service, and so this is a common thing that is utilized amongst departments all across the country, and so that's important. And I also want to add that I saw some of the video from your officers who were on scene during the protests. I just want to thank your department for the work that you did in the high stress situation. The perspective that I saw was different from that which was shown on the news because I was sitting directly next to one of the emergency management police officers in a class I was taking. So I appreciate their professionalism in that situation and the work that you all do on a regular basis. Thank you.
Councilmember Ryan Alter.
I was curious how y'all make a decision on not only the number of individual or officers that will respond, but what kind of equipment or gear that they are equipped with. You know, if we saw certainly that first day DPS come in with very heavy riot gear, and I think part of the reaction from the crowd was to what they were seeing, right? That hadn't, And so I'm curious how y'all make that determination in, protecting the police officer versus just kind of being overgeared, as it were. How do you think about that?
It really depends on how much lead time we have in terms of planning. If we're given notification the day before, we don't have the capability to spin up our special response team, our crowd management team, which may have different equipment. So each of our officers is trained and equipped with different protective equipment, depending on the situation. But the uniform of the day is still going to be the uniform of the day. So all of our officers aren't equipped with the same things that you may have seen some of those DPS troopers wearing because they were coming specifically for that assignment. We were asked kind of at the last minute to assist on that first day. And so it would have been the uniform that the officers would have typically worn.
And just to add to that, I think we make those decisions on a case-by-case basis. Obviously, what's happening, what's unfolding in front of us. But you're right. Sometimes the wrong type of gear and equipment can make the situation worse. So we take all of those things into consideration when we make those decisions.
Thank you.
Councilmember Fuentes.
Yes, thank you. Can you touch on our staffing levels and how we're able to provide this level of assistance? One thing that we hear about quite frequently from the department is the severity of our staffing crisis that we have. And so when we send police officers to help with this type of event, who is paying for overtime? Is there overtime pay associated with it? And how is the department allocating resources knowing that we're already short-staffed?
It's a juggling act for sure. I assure you, we do the best that we can in staffing, that we take a few officers from each area to combine these teams to be able to deploy onto campus to assist. We also do the same thing when it comes to other protests and other events that might pop up that we don't have as much lead time. We monitor the calls that are holding through the watch commander's office in the real-time crime center, and we try to make every opportunity we have to make sure that we are still addressing the high priority calls that are happening in the city. And so we did not send as many officers maybe as we would have at other times should we have been more heavily staffed. So it's definitely a balancing act, but we're still cognizant of the calls for service that we need to take within the city.
As for pay, is that something that the university will be reimbursing?
I'm not sure if there's any reimbursement that comes through that. That would be more for finance than for me.
Thank you.
Councilmember Kadri.
Kind of going off of Councilmember Reinholter's questioning, I think we've seen a lot of protests in the city, right? That's something great about Austin, right? Whether it be during the summer of BLM, whether it be the current situation and things, way before I was even born. Protests aren't a new thing. Large crowds aren't a new thing. One thing that Councilor Reinholter mentioned was, folks coming out and all the gear that, we saw the pictures on social media that they came out in. What warranted such a strong show of force in terms of bodies that were on the ground, both by UTPD, by DPS? Obviously, there's about 50 APD officers, and then just the tactical gear that they had, right? Because I've been to protests at the Capitol, right? And I see sometimes APDs there, and it's more crowd control, right? I don't see you guys all, dolled up and all that gear. What warranted such a strong use of, or at least the aesthetics of such a strong use of force in terms of what was worn and how many bodies were out there? Because I'm sorry, just to clarify, and if I'm wrong, please do correct. There had been no public camping, right, on campus. And there hadn't been any violence by the protesters towards anyone.
Correct. And I can't speak to how and why and to what level DPS equips their troopers and what their response is. Our response was different. Mm-hmm. I believe that the officers at the University of Texas were dressed the same as our officers were. So I can't speak to the deployment strategy of DPS.
Got it. All right. Thank you.
Thank you all for the presentation. I think we got all the questions. Really appreciate you being here today and briefing us. It was good information, good questions as well.
Thank you. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.